All right, we are back after a very long time of doing a whole lot of nothing with the Raw Time Champ podcast. And we've got a super special guest tonight, Ben Barry. So, as usual, we got Matt, Calvin, and myself. Coy is not able to make it. And Ben, if you don't already know who he is a Grandmaster production shooter. He has a podcast, the Short Course podcast, and I would highly recommend it. And most importantly, he is running for the Area 6 director election. So, we're going to get his thoughts on some questions tonight. And then if we have time, we're going to go over some listener questions about shooting at the end. So I hope I did you justice there, Ben, but do you have anything else to say that I didn't already?
No, I mean, I think that's about it. I just, yeah, I've been in the sport for coming up on 10 years now. And, I think, just trying to figure out how to give back. And when I saw the opportunity come up to run, with the election cycle being what it is, I've got a kid due in a couple of weeks, so this is not the best timing, but I just I couldn't pass up. Thanks. I couldn't wait 4 more years. I figured I'd throw my hat in and, see what happens. So just happy to be here. Happy to talk to you guys and yeah, get some perspective on things.
Awesome. Well, congrats on the kid, man. I didn't realize that. That's super cool.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I guess I will just get started. So I think we each have a couple questions for Ben tonight, and so I'll go first. I guess my first question is rule stability, specifically equipment rule stability, is something that's very important personally to me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that matter.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, I think in general, the bylaws changed to make it so that we just have one big package once a year of rules changes generally makes sense. Basically, batch up all the changes, have them come through early in the season. Ideally, you'd know what they are so you can start planning, but they take effect January 31st. I think that's actually from all the bylaws changes a few years ago. I think that one was actually a pretty sound one. I think having things be, at most change once a year, I think it makes sense. I wouldn't want it to be much more than that. I mean, if you did, you'd want to give like 6 months of warning or something like that. Now, that's I don't know. That's I think a good policy. Are there times when we might need to make changes sooner? Theoretically, but I think the bylaw has an exception for if there's some kind excuse me, some kind of legally mandated, something happens. But I can't really imagine what that would be. So
Cool.
does
Yeah.
that make sense
No,
or?
that makes a lot of sense. And just speaking as my personal opinion, that's a lot of what I would like to hear. As I guess not an Area 6 voter, but as a USPSA member. So one small follow-up question that kind of goes with that, I guess. Can you briefly describe what would be some like an equipment rule change you would support, and not necessarily like a specific example, but more like what type of criteria do you personally use to judge a rule change to decide if I like that or I don't like that?
That is a great question. Yeah, I think generally speaking, the question is, does this make the competition more interesting, or does it just become something that everybody has to have? So, for example, in IPSC in production, you can have a race holster if you want it, and that to me is not so much a speed advantage. I don't know if you were to put it on a timer that a race holster is really that much faster, but it is a convenience thing for guys that are shooting multiple guns. You don't necessarily have to get a Kydex shell molded for every gun, and so in that sense, if you were to allow race holsters in production, you might say, well, that's going the wrong direction. Production's supposed to be the stock gun division. But to me, if we look at it and say, does it further the goal of making the competition, giving shooters options without forcing them to do something? So if, for example, you made limited optics allow major, then to win nationals, you pretty much would have to shoot major. And so that's a case where you can say that's an option, but really the balance between the two choices is so overwhelming. Major power factor is such an advantage that the option is really an illusion. And so, for example, things like allowing you to put your production gear anywhere on your belt, Okay, fine. That doesn't really bother me. I'm not moving my gear around, but if people want to, it's not something that's such an advantage that everybody has to do it. Um, so that's the kind of thing that I look for is when we're looking at a rule, is it something that's just going to become something everybody has to do? You know, when you take carry optics from 10 rounds to allowing 140 millimeter mags, well, you're basically requiring people to have 140 millimeter mags. You can have guys who show up and shoot a couple matches with their factory mags, but they're pretty quickly that's going to basically become a mandatory modification. The rules don't tell you you have to have it the way that they say you must have an optic on the gun, but de facto it's required to be competitive. And so to me, when we're looking at a rule change, it's about, does it actually add options? Does it further some goal of the sport? Or does it just make one more box that every person who wants to be competitive has to check?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, cool. Thank you for that. I think I'm going to pass it off to Matt next. So let's hear your question.
Yeah. So you've been working with North Carolina section for a while. What were some of the important lessons that you didn't really expect from helping run that? And then what, to follow up on that, what are you hoping to learn as an area director with regards to, I guess, the match, and then how you want to work with the membership in your area?
Yeah. So I think to take the first one, honestly, in North Carolina, we've so when I so the first time I shot the North Carolina section was in 2013, and I signed up to work it just because I figured that was what you do. If I had the opportunity to help, I would. And so from the very beginning, I got to see those matches, working them, and at least as long as I've been in the sport, the North Carolina section has been a staff reset match. Fairly straightforward scheduling. We would do, Saturday AM, Saturday PM, all day Sunday kind of schedule, staff shot on Friday. And so when Steph took over the section in late 2018 and was charged with, putting on the state match in 2019, we just went back to that playbook. Honestly, it's a good formula. It's been working for a long time. I wish I really had something that jumped to mind in terms of lessons learned. If I can say there's one thing that I think North Carolina gets right that a lot of places don't. When people say, oh, North Carolina can run staff reset matches, Georgia, South Carolina, Area 6, they can run staff reset matches because they have a lot of ROs nearby. That's not the case. People travel. People come from South Carolina. They come from Virginia to work our match because they feel taken care of. The key to staff reset is taking care of your people. It's making them feel valued. It's not taking them for granted. It's not saying you guys can pick over the prize table after all the shooters get to go. It's not saying, hey, here's your lunch. It's cold and flies have gotten on it. It's you have to take care of your people. And if you do that, your people will take care of you. And so I think when we look at something like, if there's one thing that I wish we could spread, it's that attitude of, you can't just expect ROs to materialize out of thin air, especially good ones. You got to work to keep the good ones. And if you do that, then you'll have people, and people will say this, they'll say, oh, I went and worked nationals. I went and worked this state match. I'm never going back there, but I'll work for you guys anytime. And man, my heart swells, when someone says that to you, because it means, okay, I didn't go to that match, but that's sort of a microcosm of we're doing something right and we're taking care of our people. And then, as far as scaling that up to the area level, I think it really is just a matter of trying to scale the model, trying to learn lessons from other folks. There are clubs all across Area 6 that I haven't got to shoot at, but they put on great level 2s. They have great RO groups. And so I think, where the discussion is actually ongoing right now. Hey, among, the 3 candidates, what are we going to do? Whichever one of us wins, like, what's the plan for the Area 6 match next year? Because traditionally Area 6, the match has been in the spring. I personally am not a fan of that. To me, my area match is the next best thing to nationals. It should be the second to last match on the calendar for me. Ideally, it'd be late in the season because I'd be training up to it. It's the second weekend in May, and I'm about to go shoot Area 6 this weekend. Not my favorite thing. It gets a lot more people to attend, I think, because there's nothing else really on the calendar. But if you're actually saying, is this match for the shooters in Area 6? Well, then let's run it for them. And for those people who want to train up for it and have it be, maybe they don't get to go to nationals, but Area 6 is the biggest match on the calendar for them. Well, let's make it the biggest match. Let's make it their season ender. That would be my personal philosophy. But there's a lot of tradition there, and I'm sensitive to that. And so just kind of really trying to build relationships and have people in different areas who are willing to say, hey, here's the situation with that, and give me context and give me feedback and say, this is a good idea, that's a bad idea. Because man, it's tough. I mean, you can have a couple conversations with people, but actually trying to get a real sense of what everybody as a group wants, I mean, it's basically impossible. You can do surveys, but surveys don't get 100% participation. So it's, just building those contacts and sort of having people all around the area to sort of provide that perspective has been really cool, and I hope it continues.
Awesome. Well, I think Calvin, you're up.
Okay, so I'm gonna change the subject a little bit here. So there's been some previous talks about IPSC and USPSA's relationship with IPSC. Do you think it's important or beneficial for USPSA rules to align with IPSC, and why?
Yeah, I think the key is to have them be compatible. So if somebody shoots USPSA and wants to go shoot overseas, at least having it possible so that you can be competitive in USPSA rules without, basically having to do permanent modifications to your gun that would rule you ineligible to take that gun. If you're shooting limited, you can slap a different mag oil on it and go shoot standard. If you want to go to that level. So for example, all my guns are IPSC production legal because I don't do anything to them that would disallow them from being that way. And so I think I personally think that at a national cultural level, we do need to say, yes, we have our nationals, and that's a big match for a lot of folks, but we're a part of this other organization, and we should at least be compatible. And so when you get into guys, maybe some guy does do some carry optics legal milling to his CZ Shadow 2, and then he says, oh, what's this on the calendar? IPSC nationals? Or maybe it's a the Jamaican match or the Costa Rican match, or one of these short hop to another country type IPSC matches. And then he's like, oh, I didn't realize I've permanently modified my gun in a way that I can't go compete anymore. So to me, I think that would be the guiding light, is how can we, generally speaking, I'd like to keep our rules more similar, but if they're going to be different, let's try and make them different in a way that if somebody does want to go shoot an IPSC match, it's a reversible modification.
Cool.
Yeah.
And my other question doesn't make sense, so I'm not even going to ask it.
Okay.
I can give you an answer.
If you think of another one, I think we're gonna loop back around. So if you think of another one by the time we get to you, then you feel free. But I've got my second question for you. Is so recently there's been the provisional division limited optics added, and that kind of tangentially is related to my question, which is, what are your thoughts on number of divisions?
Yeah, so I'm actually not necessarily one of these people who thinks that having too many divisions is per se a problem. I think it can cause problems if we're trying to have nationals with only 2 divisions. So the more divisions you have, the more nationals you have to have. But to me, if you do it so that even these lower participation divisions are either grouped in together or with some higher participation ones, or you just have 1 or 2 big nationals and you just award slots by ratio, then I don't really see the issue. Especially, again, to go back to the IPSC point, I think at least as long as Classic and Revolver are IPSC divisions, we should keep our rules around. So if somebody does want to participate in that, it doesn't bother me. As far as limited optics adding, so I guess what I'm saying is numerically, it doesn't really bother me, but I think there is a sort of complexity level where people come in and they see carry optics, which I don't know where the name carry optics came from. I guess maybe they stole it from IDPA, which calls their thing carry optics. But I mean, these are not carry guns, so that's kind of confusing. And then now there's this limited optics thing, and it's pretty inscrutable. I mean, the equipment appendices are not the most clear about what is and isn't allowed. And so, to me, the issue is more, why do we have a division that is so similar? And if there's interesting competition there, is it worth evolving the current divisions to encompass that? And then instead of just creating a new one. I mean, I've said before, I would like to see, in addition to production going to 15 rounds, I would like to see carry optics just become limited, right? All the modifications that you're allowed to make, adding weight to the gun, modifying it, this, that, and the other. I mean, you can interchange basically any part of a carry optics gun except the serialized component at this point. And so that's really a lot more like limited in spirit. And so let's do that, and then let's have an actual stock optics, production optics type division. And so to me, at that point, then you actually have that choice. But there would be a meaningful distinction there. Whereas, yeah, right now the distinction is so minor. To me, that's the issue. It's not the numeric difference. If someone said to me, "Hey, we want to add a 10th division, but it's for Glock 19 sized guns and smaller," okay, well, it's a 10th division, but there's some real difference there. So to me, the number of divisions is not a particular issue. It's just making sure that we don't end up having to, have too many nationals and having divisions that are too similar to each other.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I've kind of always thought that divisions should be different enough to justify their own existence. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you, Matt. You're up.
I don't have another question, but we could probably roll into Coy's. So,
oh yeah, does he have something he sent?
Yeah, and I think this is more regarding as Ben as a shooter. What is the thing people are focused on that isn't as important in your opinion? And then conversely, what are things that people are not talking about that does need immediate attention?
Mm-hmm. So what are people focus on?
And what should they focus on?
Yeah. I mean, I think generally speaking, I mean, if I were to try and there's always this stuff. Hey, someone wants to come practice. Like, okay, what do you want to practice? Shooting on the move and swingers. It's like, okay, that's probably not where you're losing the most time, but that's what people think is important. I personally, I try and say that I pretty rarely shoot on the move, but I try and shoot into and out of positions as often as possible. And so it's really that one target coming in and going out that makes the difference. If I really had to boil it down to one thing, I think people generally speaking overweight speed and underweight points. Now, maybe that's because I shoot a minor division. Well, the two divisions that I shoot are minor scored. But I think generally speaking, I mean, classic example is just that, what was it, the Bill drill match at Nationals, which, yes, okay, technically the guy that won it, yeah, he had 6 alphas, but one was in the head. If that had been an IPSC target, it would have been a miss over the shoulder. So it's like, okay, technically you got the alpha, but that was and no disrespect to that guy, I'm sure he can be accurate when he wants to be. The point of that drill was to raw speed, and he hooked up. So no, you have to know the definition of success for whatever you're doing, and he achieved it in that case. But to me, all the stuff about scoop draws and jailbait splits and all this stuff, if your gun's low coming into the position and you're not ready to shoot when you get there, but then you bring the gun up and you rail off a 16 split, it's like, okay, good for you, but it took you 80 hundredths to get the gun there and settle it. So what did you really gain? So I think a lot of people, yeah, they're really focused on how it looks, how it sounds. And you look at the guys like Nils, you look at the guys like Eric, you look at the guys like Steger. When they shoot something really impressive, it doesn't look that impressive. Now you watch a guy like JJ or a guy like Casey, there's an athleticism there that I think people say, oh, I need to move like that. And yes, that athleticism is cool, but I don't think it's required. You watch someone like Eric shoot, and it's you almost you're like, oh, that wasn't that good, and then you look down, it's like, oh, he shot 16 rounds in 10 seconds at 4 different positions or whatever. And so there's that element of, you have to actually look at what the actual result is, not just how does it look, how does it feel, how does it sound. But when you put it on a timer, is it fast? Not just does it look or feel fast.
That makes a lot of sense. So I don't know, does anyone have any other questions, like interview type questions for Ben, or are we out?
I think all of us are out, unless Calvin managed to come up with something.
I did not.
Dang it, Calvin.
Nothing intelligent anyway.
We've never required you to be intelligent on
Oh,
this
okay.
podcast before.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah,
Yeah,
We'd love it. Yeah.
What so like tell me about Dragon's Cup, because I've sort of seen the videos, I've heard different people's side of it, but was it, like subjectively, and I know you guys could probably talk for 30 minutes each about it, but what was kind of your takeaways on it, and what
I think Calvin was the only one who went.
Oh, was it?
I think I was the only one here who went.
I didn't
Oh.
sign up because I missed.
Calvin's the only
sign up
one
by
who
7
went this
seconds.
year. I missed it because I was sick, but I did go to the two.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Was it similar this year to last year?
I would say so. So what makes Dragon's Cup quite a bit different from other USPSA matches to me is that it's a lot more technical shooting, so it's a lot more starting and stopping, very similar to IPSC in that regard. Obviously, with USPSA rules, I think that's the biggest difference. You may have to stop or move to a position for just 1 or 2 targets, and then you have to move again. Which is, if you shoot like a lot of level 1, like the stereotypical level 1 match in USPSA, that's not how it is.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who outside of USPSA, they will criticize USPSA for being like drag races because they will go to like their one local match that will do like 8 and 8. So that's probably the biggest difference. They'll have pretty far partials. Like you have like 15, 20-yard tuxedos, and like they had some pretty like interesting movers. Like they had a sliding swinger, but it wasn't like a normal swinger. It was like one of those, I don't know the name for it, but it's like it moves in like a unpredictable pattern. I don't know what you call that thing.
Monkey swinger.
What's it called?
Monkey swinger.
A monkey swinger. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
one of those, but then like on a ramp that slides down. So it's like it's actually a shooting challenge, and it's not just like a pure gimmick. So it is
Right.
pretty cool. And then all the stages had like tons of options. You had very high, skilled shooters shooting in all different kinds of ways. So there wasn't a whole lot of like linear stages where you can only shoot one way.
Did that entail long walkthroughs on almost every stage, or could you kind of walk up and just come up with a decent plan? Like it might not be the same plan as someone else, but it was roughly equivalent, or was it one of these where you really had to study the stages?
I would say you had to study. If you didn't show up the day prior and walk all the stages, I think you would have been at a pretty major disadvantage.
Interesting.
And the stages are very large too, because the bays are really big. Yeah, so that's also very different from like your stereotypical USPSA match. So you had a lot of room to run, and then you also had lots of opportunities for far shots.
Yeah, that was the main thing. Kind of talking to people is it's just, it was sort of a spectacle, and that's something that I've said before, is that there should kind of be this wow factor when you go to nationals. I think, you should kind of walk up and see stuff that you're not going to see at your local club match, and that might be complexity, that might be difficulty, but it also, to some degree, it's just scale and production value. Things like having that little bus that you only shot 4 or 6 shots out of it, but it gets attention, it gets views, it gets,
absolutely,
and it's just not something you're going to see at a state match, or probably even an area match. It's that level of, I can't get this at home, taking it to the next level that I think currently, at least, nationals doesn't really deliver on.
Yeah, I mean, how else would you get a bunch of people from all over the country and even internationally to go to the middle of nowhere, West Texas? You have to put on something really good for that to happen. So and they did it.
And it fills up in like the same time frame as the nationals.
That's cool. Why I didn't go this year, is I think I was like 5 minutes late on practice score or something.
That tells you something. I mean, when people, when people are willing to, sign up and pay their money for something that isn't a state championship, it's not an area championship. I just happened to, a few weekends ago, I was up in Kentucky shooting the bluegrass low cap match, which unfortunately did not fill up. But it was a great match, and it was one of those where it wasn't a state match, wasn't an area match. Everybody who was there just wanted to be there. They just wanted to shoot those guns with people of like mind, and it was really different, honestly. I've shot a lot of state matches, and I think I've only shot Area 6 once, but there definitely was a feeling of everybody just wanted to be there, and it made the whole thing kind of more pleasant. I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it, but I imagine Dragon's Cup was the same way. It was there was no reason to be there unless you wanted to be.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've only been to one Nats, and I've been to 3 Dragons Cups, so that kind of tells you something.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's cool. Yeah, no, that definitely that one kind of really caught my attention. I was like, okay, people are really talking about this match. What is going on?
Yeah, but you guys don't sign up next year because I want to spot again.
I'm gonna be camping my computer next year.
You have to. That's like the only way to get a spot.
That's what I planned on doing this year, and then I think I saw text messages from you guys and was like, "Oh shit!" and ran over to my computer, and I had missed it.
It's crazy. I mean, it's good. It's good that they're able to fill those slots, because that's what you want as a match director. But yeah, it would be nice if they could scale it up, or have some other way.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even really complain, because they put on a huge match, so it's not like they had a super limited number of sites. Just it is what it is, right? It's just because of the quality of the match. So,
but the next amazing thing is the volume of staff that they're able to produce.
Oh yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah, you'll get everyone, like Luigi staffed, Timmy staffed a lot. In fact, a lot of high level shooters actually help staff the match.
Do you think that had to do with what Ben was talking about earlier, of taking care of your ROs and they'll come running to help type thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool.
Interesting.
So they treated their staff well, it sounds like.
Yeah, Billy and Marco have been in business with each other for a while. So I think they figured out, all right, this is how we need to make sure we're taking care of a lot of people. And then the network that they were able to build through people that they know really helped develop the match. Even from, because originally they were supposed to hold the first match in 2020. They held it over due to COVID. 2021 was an absolute major success.
Yeah, that's really
huge.
Cool.
It's really tough to put on your first major and hit it out of the park. But yeah, people were talking about that one. But yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that. But yeah, the fact that, and I don't know what the staff package was like, but yeah, obviously, Timmy came from wherever, Minnesota, wherever he lives up north. Yeah. Luigi came from Florida. Not, and so it's obviously when if you wanted one, again, nationals kind of skews this, but if you wanted a way to grade the quality of a match, and this works at local matches and anything, is how far are people willing to travel for this match? And to me, I think it's pretty interesting that we get very little international attendance at our nationals. You would think people would want to come shoot our nationals, but doesn't really seem like
USPSA nationals or IPSC nationals.
U.S. nationals, yeah. If people do come in, they usually come for the IPSC nationals when it's held.
I wonder if that has something to, or it probably is for a lot of reasons, but I wonder if one of the reasons is the pretty substantial equipment rule differences.
But it's almost all in the other direction, right? I mean, any IPSC legal production optics, standard, open gun. I mean, open, you'd have to load your ammo a little hotter, right?
I'm not sure actually.
But
160 versus 165.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or if you're limited, it would be 170 versus standard.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those where I don't know the answer, but I think that is a question that deserves pondering. If we really do put on such great nationals, why don't more people internationally want to come shoot them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I've never thought about that before.
I think the fun way to ask that is when was the last time Groffel came to the U.S. for USPSA nationals?
Yeah,
that was back in the 2010s.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
the last time we got foreigners was a couple of Canadians in 21.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Connor, when did we shoot Nats?
It was
Production Nats?
2021, and that was we squatted with Robert. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but
Chernagoy,
really,
I think is
yeah,
how
like
you say it.
really,
Oh, yeah.
really good. Like I mean, it was super impressive squatting with him, and super nice guy too.
Yeah.
Well,
no, it's always cool to have those guys come over and shoot with us for sure.
yeah, it was really enjoyable. I think that's the first time I had really shot a match with someone from out of country actually, so it was a pretty fun experience. And it definitely, I mean, like I can't overstate this. He is quite good. it was pretty cool, and like I mean, he was just running around with that single stack gun like it was nobody's business. It was really fun.
Yeah, he was shooting like 20-yard poppers on the move. Like it was crazy.
Yeah, we got that. I think I remember you recording him doing that on one stage
Yeah.
on video, and I was standing there like dumbfounded. I was like, he's not going to shoot this on the move, is he? And then he did and hit them with no makeup shots. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Well, I think do we want to do a listener question, Matt? I think you have them.
Let's do the one since you're pretty much the one who experienced this year.
I forgot what this question was already. Can you remind me?
Does switching up to a heavier trigger weight force you to get better, or does it also cause any errors in your in basically manipulating the trigger or your grip?
Yeah, so for everyone that doesn't know, I have 4 Shadow 2s, and I've always used, I don't even remember what weight hammer spring, and never had any problems. And then so at a level 1 match recently, I don't even know, it may have even been a bad primer, but I had a light strike, and I don't even think I tried to fire it again, but basically it had like a small, very small primer strike on the primer. After the stage, I looked at it, and I was needless to say, pretty butthurt about that situation. So I just swapped all the hammer springs in all 4 of my shadows to whatever the next increment up was. I like 13 or something. I don't remember. But so I just upped all of them, and it made the triggers pretty substantially heavier, but not really in a bad way, I guess. So to address this question, I think it may have helped me a little bit. I don't think it was like a big deal though. Like I wouldn't go out of your way to do this just because you think it's going to make you better, but like it may have helped me a little bit, and I think it did to a small extent introduce some like marksmanship errors, because maybe you get away with a little bit more with a lighter trigger, right? And mainly on the double action. So yeah, I guess like I wouldn't go out of your way to do this just to try to improve your trigger pull or something, but I guess it helped a little bit. Trying to think of a decent example. So like I think I'm big on grip. I don't really even think about trigger control that much. I think about it from a grip perspective, and so I noticed that you get if your grip is a little bit off, or not solid, then oftentimes you can move the gun around as you press the trigger because you end up squeezing your whole hand, right? So that will happen slightly more often with a heavier trigger. So it doesn't like fundamentally change anything. But yeah, I think I'm rambling about it at this point, but hopefully that makes sense as far as heavier trigger. I thought, now I'm remembering, if part of the question was, it sounded like it was from someone who shot either single action or striker fired, and they were asking if they should switch to double action as a training method or something.
I think I'm not sure about that one. I think it's just, I think he was on a striker, and then he's looking at, I don't know, changing his connector or something like that, then possibly switching over to double action, single action, or something along those lines.
Okay, so I guess my takeaway opinion on that is, if it works and you like it, then like just don't even continue wasting mental energy on this topic. And I think as someone, I started shooting production with a VP9 actually, so I've shot I didn't shoot it a ton, but I've shot a decent variety of like trigger mechanisms, and I think once you get used to it, after like a few weeks or so, it literally doesn't matter. Like I don't really, like, I don't actually think about, okay, I'm gonna shoot a double action, and then now it's gonna be single action. Like nobody thinks about that once you've been practicing. It's just like you just do it because you're used to it. So long story short, no, I don't think it matters. If you want to switch, then do it. But like I don't think it's a big deal.
Ben, you had this one thing where you went from your Tanfo over to Glock for carry optics, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean that was honestly really cool because it was definitely noticeable. I mean, the Glock moved more, so it was a Glock 17 MOS. I was dabbling in carry optics, and I didn't have a spare Tanfolio to slap a dot on, so I was like, okay, let me just put it on this Glock. And it definitely jumped more, but it returned when I did my part. It returned just as fast, so it was moving more, but it wasn't any slower in my experience. And I definitely think that was an interesting experience in that for me, even shooting a Glock versus other striker guns, I don't know what it is about the Glock trigger, but it definitely, when I get sloppy, the shots go low left way quicker. And I don't know exactly why, but I'll shoot it at a local match or something now and then, or an outlaw match. And it's embarrassing. I'm like, who is this guy? What's happening? And I'm just like, okay, you actually have to make sure you're pulling it straight back to the rear. But once I did that, once I got used to it, like Connor's saying, I just kind of forgot about it. But I definitely think it's not necessarily one of those that it'll make you better in the sense of, something like maybe occluding your dot where it helps to retrain you to do something. I think it's just different. My view would be you just have to, whatever it is, you just have to learn how to shoot it. But it doesn't necessarily make you better at shooting anything else. You just figure out, okay, here's the exact cues that I'm looking for with this gun, what I want to feel in my hands when I'm pulling the trigger. And the cues for a different gun will just be different in my experience. And so in my mind, when I pick up a Glock, I think I have a particular sort of feeling that I want to feel in my hand when I'm pulling that trigger. And it's different with a Tanfolio. It's different with an M&P. Subtly, right? It's not completely different, but it definitely was one of those where I don't know that they overlap. But if you were going to switch to something, and this is one of the things I tell people when they talk about, oh, look at these guys who can jump and shoot one gun and then shoot another gun. If you want to do that, you need to spend a certain amount of time dedicated to one gun, right? These guys that show up every month to a club match with a different gun, it's not going to work. You can do that if you've spent 6 to 9 months dedicated to that gun at some point in your past. But if you've never done that, then switching guns every month is just going to sink you. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, Calvin, I know you've shot probably a wider variety of guns than most of us. So what do you think on this topic?
I don't know. I've shot a variety of guns, but I haven't trained with a large variety of guns. The guns I've trained with most are going to be a Glock, a CZ SP01 Shadow, and then the Tanfos, and I guess a little bit Shadow 2. So 3 of them are almost the same, and then you have the Glock. And I find like the Glock is the least forgiving when it comes to your grip positioning and pressure. But the process of learning how to shoot the gun is the same. You're discovering where to apply pressure and where to place your hands. And once you learn that process, I think you can apply it to a bunch of different guns, and then you just practice it for however long it takes. But yeah, I don't know if, like, at least to answer the original question of like trying to increase your trigger weight, if that really fundamentally changes how you approach the learning process.
Yeah, like I definitely wouldn't put a 2 or 3 pound heavier hammer spring in my training gun than my match gun, because I feel like that's just a recipe for lighting off rounds early. You're going to learn a certain amount of when the gun is going to go off. And if you spend all your time training on a lighter trigger and then only shoot, or on a heavier trigger and then only shoot the lighter one it matches, you're going to screw yourself. So don't do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually just had an interesting thought that was kind of related. I remember, I've kind of always done this, but last year I did a bunch of work on my grip, trying to make it better because, I always knew it was important. And then I had some aha moments where I was like, wow, it's even more important than I realized. So fast forward, I think I made some improvements to my grip, and then I was goofing around in off season. This was last year, maybe the year before, and I was shooting I've got a big HK with like a really heavy, it's a 45 with a really heavy double action trigger. So it's fun and it's cool, but like it's pretty hard to shoot. And I went to shoot that, and I remembered, and I'd never shoot it. I shoot it maybe once every other year or something. And I remember it being way harder to shoot than it actually was in that instance. I was like, wow, this is actually going pretty well. I thought this was going to be terrible. And I think it's because I had worked on my grip so much. So I guess the moral of the story that I have here is instead of worrying about like the actual weight of the trigger or any other details about the equipment, if you just do, the proven method of focusing on the fundamentals, like I know I'm supposed to grip hard with my offhand. I know I'm supposed to relax my firing hand. I know I'm not supposed to tense it up when I press the trigger. All this, if you just focus on the things you should be focusing on, I think it'll, you'll get better at those fundamentals as you practice them. And it makes the equipment matter less. Like obviously I couldn't shoot that gun nearly to the extent that I can shoot the guns I've practiced with, and it definitely felt weird in my hands. But I just it wasn't anywhere near as hard as I had remembered it being. So I think that's what I would say is pretty much what I said before. Don't worry about the equipment that much.
Yeah, just do the work.
Well, so do you guys want to do one more question, or do we want to save it for next time? I don't remember what the question was either again, so.
Are we all switching to limited optics?
Yes, obviously.
I've already ordered my Infinity. Had to remortgage the house, but no, I'm kidding. I'm not going to be switching.
Dude, I think I'm going back to production. Like I'm just gonna stay. I was
really?
like, oh, I'll flip flop. Yeah, like I was like, oh, I'm just gonna probably shoot carry optics at the section match. And honestly, at this point, it's just on good stages where you're not shooting 10 rounds, 12 rounds, 14 rounds from one position. I don't know. It doesn't bother me. And
But
it's
then
just,
you need
I don't
good
know.
stages.
Yeah, match selection is important. But yeah, no, I think that really is the key. Is I remember there were some matches that were really driving me up the wall, and I just stopped going to those matches. And even in carry optics, shooting 16, 18 rounds from one position or a step apart, just it's not that interesting.
Yeah, just because you don't have to do a reload doesn't suddenly make that fun.
Yeah. And so I don't know. There's been this element where I feel like I had to kind of like prove my credibility by like going and shooting carry optics. I'm not just this guy who hides in production. Now that production is a hider division, which is unthinkable 6 years ago, but here we are.
It is in
but I
Texas.
feel like what's that?
It is in Texas.
Oh, dude, it is everywhere.
It didn't used to be, but yeah.
Yeah,
it is now.
Although it is occasionally fun to go to a club match and like beat all the carry optics guys and shoot production. But that's the thing is I don't know. I feel like I've hit a certain point where I just want to shoot what's fun to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think I like from a just isolated, focused on myself perspective, I enjoy shooting production the most. I don't know why. I just really like it. I even dig 10 rounds. If they moved it to 15, you wouldn't hear me complain, but I even like the 10 round thing.
I'm coming around.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm here for it, but if they moved it up to 15 again, I think that still retains the spirit of doing more than one reload on a stage and things. So I think it still maintains that spirit. It just makes it slightly less annoying on the bad stages. So I pretty much support that. But what killed production for me was it was just like no one else was shooting it. I think it was when Calvin took like 3 months off or something, and I was just showing up to matches shooting production literally by myself. I was like, all right, this isn't fun anymore.
And then now it's the reverse because you're
yeah,
in CO.
Well, I've thought about switching back to. I mean, I kind of miss it. I have some personal goals in carry optics, but I like genuinely miss shooting production. Well, so Matt, you're not actually going to switch to limited optics, are you? Because you're switching to
open.
Haha.
And like my main reason for that is I wasn't able to sign up on time because practice score crashed in 3 minutes when the I think 90 slots that were remaining after pre-registration.
You mean for
Mhm.
Carry Optics Nats?
Yeah, for Carry Optics
Oh.
Nats, I wasn't able to get a slot, and besides, June wasn't going to be an opportune time for me anyway. It's a lot better if I could go to Open Nats in September this year. So I said, yeah, screw it. Talked to my builder and said, hey, let's do this.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
What about you, Calvin? Are you going to switch to LO?
I mean, I already have an LO gun. I just need to put an optic on it.
Which one is that?
My production gun.
Oh, yeah. No. It has to be a very expensive 2011.
Oh, I suppose. No, I'm not gonna go buy one.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'll take one if any of the 2011 well, I guess only one 2011 manufacturer. If any double stack 1911 manufacturer wants to send me one, I'll take it. But I'm not gonna give a positive review just because I get one.
I think it will be interesting to see kind of the prisoner's dilemma that goes on with signups when people are looking at, oh, who's signed up in CO versus LO. Oh, I could jump ship. There are more people in CO, and once it tips like 51-49 the other way, and then everybody else jumps. For the people that actually have a gun that fits in both. Obviously, if they did a limited optics nationals, it would sell out because people are gonna slap a magwell on a gun they already have. But at area matches, which I think is a better sort of gauge of what people actually want to shoot. You don't judge revolver participation based on revolver nationals. You judge it based on revolver participation at area matches. And so I think seeing where LO actually goes at area matches will be interesting. If it gets to that point, if they're allowed next year.
Like you said, Area 6 is this weekend, right?
Right.
Okay, and then we should see something interesting with Area 4 next month.
I thought they weren't. I thought it was provisional only allowed at level 2s, but not 3 until next year.
They're allowing it.
Wait, so Area 4 has LO in it?
Yep.
I didn't know provisional divisions. I mean, I'm so out of touch with this, but I didn't even know they put provisional divisions in majors, like, period. I thought it was like a level 1 thing.
I'm out of touch with it as well, but they did allow limited optics as a division over at Area 4.
I'm gonna leave it at this, but I'm kind of interested to watch how Area 4 goes from the sideline, just being local here.
You guys are any of you shooting Area 4?
I think just
I'm
Calvin
shooting
and I.
Area 4.
Okay.
Yeah,
Why?
it's at the range that I train at, but I'm not shooting it.
Yeah, it's too late for me to get my refund, so I'm just gonna go.
Connor, you're working on
That's it.
getting married. Don't worry about it.
Well, that wouldn't have normally stopped me, but my fiance is very, very understanding of my shenanigans. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how it goes. I hope it goes well for them genuinely. I don't know how much confidence I have, to be frank, but I hope it goes well.
They're the ones that sent out the email that was like, "Hey, we don't know what's going on with the area director, but the match is still on." That was pretty legit. I thought that was respectable of them. So yeah, hopefully it's a good match. But yeah, that's
Well,
weird.
yeah, I will say the match director is he also sent out an email saying that they would be releasing details on all the finances and the award money and
Yes.
things like that. I know for a fact, I know him personally, he is a genuinely good person, so I know there's not going to be any shenanigans like that. Let me be very clear. He's not going to do anything actually bad. I just don't know if it's the type of match that I would enjoy shooting personally.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you got to pick your battles. Yeah, like originally I wasn't signed up to shoot. Well, I'm not shooting any nationals, but I just this past week in consultation with the family, ended up signing up for IPSC nationals. Just because I don't know, I'm a glutton for punishment or something. But
that's cool though. Where is that this year? Is it in Florida again?
It's at Gorka's range in Volusia County, Florida.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting. It's going to be on the short side. It's like 2 days, 18 stages. But I don't know. Partially, it was just one of those. I was looking at the sign up list, and it was just all the people that like shoot internationally were signed up, and I don't know if I'm going to shoot with a crew. It just seemed like that's kind of the place I wanted to be. Whereas, you look at I could get a slot to Iron Sight Nationals, but I just look at it, I'm just like, just doesn't. It doesn't get me out of bed. I don't know why. Maybe that's wrong,
Yeah.
but
No, I know
Actually,
that
Ben, have
feeling.
you shot overseas?
I haven't. I would love to, but yeah, stars just haven't aligned. But I shot the extreme match that they put on at that same range in January of this year, which was cool. Not perfect, far from perfect, but it was a cool match. I liked it. But yeah, why do you ask?
I was going to ask if you saw anything different over there that maybe you'd want to bring back to USPSA.
Yeah, no, I honestly I would love to. I've watched a lot of match videos, but obviously that doesn't capture kind of how the whole thing runs. But I've heard various stories over the years about, for example, the way they'll do chrono, where they just roll up and they're like, hey, like give me rounds out of that magazine, doing that kind of random sampling type stuff versus like Area 6. They even sent out in the email, you will be asked for 8 rounds when you show up to your first stage. It's like, great. Okay. Like you're not even trying, So if you fail chrono at Area 6, it is either because you made a mistake or you're just not very good at cheating. But you know when you will be peeing in the cup, so you've been warned. Govern yourself accordingly, I guess. Whatever.
That's about it.
Yeah, I think. Do you have anything you'd like to add before we close it out?
No, I'll just say, so I am running for Area 6, but honestly, however I am involved with the sport, whether I get elected or not, I have really enjoyed getting to, in interview formats like this, but also via email and private messages and everything, just hear more about the sport from different corners of the country. Because obviously I just sort of see the bubble that I'm in here in North Carolina, with a few states around. And so, send me an email. My email is ben@barryshooting.com, just my last name, shooting.com. And, if you're seeing something that you think would be interesting, or I said something that you agree with or you disagree with, let me know. I genuinely want to understand how people in different areas of the sport see things, because I think that's important. I think a lot of the way that we've gotten to where we are is people just talk to their buddies and they sort of think that the buddies are a representative cross section, and they're not. And then, we end up with these decisions that leave most of the membership kind of scratching their heads. So yeah, just getting in touch with more folks has been awesome. And so I appreciate you guys giving me the time and honestly just getting to talk to you guys and hear how things are in other parts of the country.
Absolutely. Thanks for reaching out to us.
Yeah, thank you. That
Awesome.
was really fun.
Yeah.
All
for
right,
sure.
guys. Stay tuned for the next one. It may be tomorrow. It may be in like 2025. You never know.